Hey everyone, so this is our second time to do this whole meeting thing because we just went through a whole entire session, and towards the last question somebody notified us that we weren't recording. So nobody is going to be on this chat. It's just going to be us two talking and answering the questions, and it should go a little bit quicker possibly than our last one, but you won't miss anything because nobody really asked anything extra in our group chat that we had that wasn't already asked or addressed. So anyway, we're going to just start over it. We're going to cover everything as similar as we did the last time.
It's going to be better because we've already practiced.
Yeah, we practiced a lot. So anyways, we are going to just kind of introduce ourselves and then go over a little bit of what's included in Module 1, answer some questions from our Facebook group and some that we received in emails, and cover all those in detail.
We are. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm Barbara Parks. I'm a physical therapist. I treat horses and riders. So that's how Casey and I met, was working with her horse. And I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, so I'm Casey French. I'm the barrel racing portion of this course. So yes, the way that Barbara and I met was I had a horse that I was trying to rehabilitate after two injuries that he had went through, two surgeries rather, and wasn't having any luck. I did all the things I was supposed to do or told to do, vet work, best medicine money can buy. I spent a lot of money, and just to no avail. And so we met through a mutual friend who is a neuromuscular dentist, and she works for both of us, but friends. We're all friends. So she introduced me to Barbara, and that is where this all started. And we documented our progress with this particular horse.
Yeah, I'm glad we did.
Yes, we documented it, and then also I've taken the methods that I learned on this one horse and kind of made it into something that worked for a lot of different horses that we have. We have barrel horses and rope horses at my house. My husband is a team roper, so we have heel horses, and just kind of a variety, and it seems to work on every single one of them. So
it's great.
Tried and true.
Yes. So with this class, I'm going to give you guys just like kind of a basic overview, and for those of you who aren't already in the class, and then we'll go into the questions from there. But the whole reason Casey and I developed this is because when we were working together and we're talking about all this stuff, and I'm telling her things and she's starting to apply them, and she's like, oh man, if only more people knew this, if only this were common knowledge, like think how much better our sport could be, how many injuries we could prevent, how great this would be if more people knew about this. So how can we bring that information to the masses? And we're like, well, an online course makes a lot of sense, right? So that's why we're here. And jump in.
Short story about this. So we say this a few times throughout the modules, like this isn't something that we made up. Now parts of it we did, like we developed it and tailored it more towards a barrel racing style and what would be more or most beneficial for something in that discipline. But we didn't make it up. Like a lot of the stuff that Barbara has worked with me on, I learned in all different disciplines and different types of training styles.
Because you actually do have experience in multiple different disciplines, which is cool. Yeah.
But I will say that the way that we implemented it is totally different than anything that I've ever done before. And so that was something that was brand new to me. However, the ideas and concepts are not new. They're old as...
Yeah, I didn't make it up.
Dirt.
No.
They're old as time.
Yes.
Didn't make them up. It is just a easier method and a way to go about doing it in a practical manner.
Yeah, and really what we want you guys to take away from this is not like our recipe for success in terms of like XYZ exercise is the magic sauce. Like we want to teach the concepts, the big picture, how to recognize when things are going well, how to recognize when you need to take a step back, and how you can then apply this to absolutely everything you're going to do, not just what we tell you we like to do. So that's really the big overarching goal of what we're trying to do here. So in Module 1, you guys just watched a series of videos that kind of...
Some of them haven't
Yeah, or if you haven't watched, you will when you join us. You're gonna go through like the basics of biomechanics, the basics of strength and conditioning principles. It's the theory that kind of underlays the whole. Yeah, it's the basis on which we will build for everything else. So that's what we just went through, and then that's what a lot of these questions are going to touch on that we're going to go through now. Unless you have anything else to add.
No.
Cool.
Good.
Off we go. The first question is a really big question. It's like one of my favorite things to talk about. So we're going to start off strong. The first question is, after looking at so many horses, how can you tell what is conformation versus biomechanics or muscle development? And then I'm going to put in here the word posture, because that's kind of how I categorize the two, is conformation versus posture. When we're learning things, it's really helpful to put things into categories, black and white categories. When we get out into the real world, nothing is black and white, it's all gray area. So we're going to talk about black and white, and then recognize that when you get out there and you're looking at horses, like, things are not always going to fit neat and tidy into the boxes that we want them to fit in. So when I'm thinking about conformation, I'm thinking about things that we cannot change. These are fixed. They're how they're going to be, and we're going to find ways to manage them. We're not trying to fix them. So things would be, if your horse has an extra vertebrae, some horses have different numbers of vertebrae. That's conformation. Malformations in a bone, so maybe in a vertebrae, ECVM, kissing spine, things like that.
Explain what ECVM is for those who don't know and haven't went down a million rabbit holes like I've chased my entire life.
I don't know if I want to send you guys down that rabbit hole, because it's kind of a nasty one.
You don't want to know. You don't want to know.
Yeah, ECVM is a cervical vertebral malformation, and basically pieces of the bone are missing, and it causes instability. And based on the severity of that, you'll see a wide variety of symptoms. So,
but with that being said, there are lots of horses that have it and are functional.
Sure.
And so, like,
don't get freaked out.
Yeah, that would be the management portion of what we're talking
about. So we have something that is abnormal, and then we're going to find ways to make it impact the horse's function less with this kind of stuff. That's my job. So other things that would fall into conformation category would be leg length, like the length of the bones, long pasterns. We cannot change that long pastern. That bone is just long.
That is one you can't change, for sure.
Joint angles are often conformational. Sometimes it could be postural, but by and large, a lot of natural joint angles are just how you're made. And I also put a note in here, limb twists can be conformational. I think often carpus or hocks, so knees or hocks down, is often conformational. And when we're talking about limb twists that are coming from up in like the shoulder girdle, is more often postural, but not always. These are not hard and fast categories. Again, like I said, it's not always as clear as we want it to be. But I also want to make a note that some things could start off as a postural issue, and then it has stayed that way for so long that now it has become conformational, because now the bones have changed shape to adapt to it, and we're stuck.
Backs come to mind.
Yeah. And you said babies. You talked about babies.
Oh, yeah. Backs, horses' backs, and after so long going in a pattern or a way that's not exactly healthy for them to go, that's when we see the big dips,
and you start to get arthritic changes that, like, bones start to fuse together. Yeah. Once they're fused, we cannot really unfuse them so well. Surgery can sometimes change that, but, like, from a biomechanics perspective, we're not going to unfuse bone, so that would become a conformational fault.
Right. And like babies that come out like club-footed or different like issues like that, there are some things that we can do to intervene, different surgeries, techniques, all those things. But as far as that goes, you can make some changes to it.
We can fix it when they're young,
in a developmental stage. And but then once they get past that point, then there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Now we shift into management instead of fixing.
And that's what's another thing too, why, like, I guess throughout all my years, I've had people tell me, like, if a horse's leg and they're older in age, they're turned in or turned out, whatever, you don't really try to address that at all. You just do it the way that it's wanting to go.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
That's the best way to manage that.
And usually there's a portion of that you can change, and then a portion of it that you cannot. And then that's the job of your physical therapist or your hoof care practitioner to kind of gauge how far, what can we change and what do we need to now adapt for and keep the horse comfortable. So then the other note I had on here was hypermobility spectrum, soft tissue kind of conformation. We're not going to change the fact that your horse has hypermobility issues.
Explain hypermobility.
Yeah, like a gymnast is how I like to explain it. A big fancy dressage warm bloods.
Hypermobility. I have it in my elbows.
The ligaments are loosey-goosey. Like a lot of gaited horses are kind of hypermobile. We're not going to change the fact that they have this hypermobility, or the opposite, what did I say? Hypomobility. I'm getting lost. Hypomobility, horses with like PSSM or muscle disorders that keep them really tight, is the opposite end of the spectrum. Like there are things we can do to manage and things we can do to improve function, but at its core, like we're not going to change the disorder with biomechanics. Okay, now we go into posture. These are things that we can change. These are the kinds of things that someone like me is going to work to correct. So the things we've been looking at in our Facebook group, we posted pictures, you guys posted pictures of your horses, we nitpicked, we drew lines, we kind of pointed out all the possible things that could be wrong with them, and a lot of that was like little dips in front of the withers or behind the withers. The big one, it's very common. Someone commented that, they're like, oh man, I'm seeing this everywhere now. And I'm like, sorry, now that you know, it is everywhere. The angle of the spine, whether it's like arched down or is it lifting up, shoulder and scapular asymmetries. Do we have one big shoulder and one smaller shoulder? Is one elevated and the other one's down?
That was really hard to see too, the scapula one, because we're typically, like, if we're riding, you're sitting right on top. And then otherwise, if you're like me and you're 5'1", you're never gonna see that. But there was a few pictures that we went over where it was a good view,
like a bird's eye view.
Like a bird's eye view of the horse, and you would not believe how many are overdeveloped in one shoulder, underdeveloped in the other, all those things.
Extremely common, and I think some of that comes from like innate sidedness, like where most humans are right-handed, most horses end up being one-sided, and then it gets perpetuated over time and can become problematic, or it could just be a natural thing. So it just kind of depends there. Standing parked out or camped under, if we really want vertical legs under their base of support, and any deviation from that is more postural. And then, like I mentioned, rotations from the shoulder girdle. And then I don't know, like, posture doesn't usually bring to mind hoof balance, but I lump hoof balance in here too, because any imbalance in the hoof, whether that's like a negative angle where their coffin bone is now like flat or tipped up the wrong way, or like medial lateral imbalance where we've got too much hoof wall on one side versus the other. If we have something like that going on in the hoof, it's going to now travel up the chain and impact the way the horse is standing, the way they're moving. It's going to change the posture and the rest of their body. So I smush hoof balance into posture because it's usually something that we can improve.
It goes the other way too.
Or the farrier can improve, not me.
It goes the other way too, though.
It does.
So while it can travel up, it can also be a mirror to travel down.
Yes.
So if you've got something that's going on, so like in the last time we talked about this, I talked about my horse's stifles.
Yeah.
So one of the first things that became evident to me was flaring, and then he also, no matter what we did, he was always high on the inside of his hind feet. So biggest flare was on the worst stifle, but he had a small one on the other one. And so now whenever I'm looking at things and I'm going over and assessing my horse, I'm like, well, what are we flaring? You know, because that lets me know, hey, I've got something going on a little bit higher up probably that I need to work on or address. So while it can be one way, it could be the other way too.
Yes, exactly. So. And I like that you made that point about when you start to see that flare come back, it's your key that, maybe there's something I'm missing. And that's the whole point of us developing your eye to be able to nitpick your horses apart, is not to make you feel like your horse is broken, but to teach you the more subtle signs to catch an issue before it becomes a big issue.
Yeah, because they do show you they are just masters of disguise.
Yes.
And so it's trying to figure out these subtle ways that they are, the body is showing us what's going on before, we get too far gone. Now, I will say at the same time, this is a lot of times when you might point fingers at your hoof care provider, and say, oh, hey, my horse is not balanced. And I will say that there are a lot of cases that is absolutely true. But I have experience with this because I have hauled my horse to every, I went all over the country with
the best of the best.
The best of the best. And nobody could get rid of what was going on in the hind feet.
Yeah, because it wasn't really a hoof problem.
Because it wasn't a hoof problem. It was actually a body problem.
Yes.
So don't always get mad at your farriers because it's not always their fault.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's something that, has to be addressed somewhere else in the body. And that is, a little bit more of what we're going to be talking about in this course too, for you to be able to differentiate what is what and separate those things from.
Totally. And so, the next piece of this question that was not explicitly asked, but I think it's important, is how do we know if what we're looking at is conformation or posture? Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it is not obvious. And sometimes I don't even know. I'm looking at a horse and I'm like, I don't know, let's try and fix it. Or let's get imaging and see what's going on in there and call the vet in and let's dig deeper into this. And if we are working to change it and we know we're doing all the right things and we know we've covered all the other bases, the hoof care, the dental, everything is covered, and we're still not making progress, okay, maybe there's something conformational in here that we're not going to fix and we need to adjust our plan or adjust our expectations for what is realistic for this animal. But sometimes I think it's a conformational issue and I'm like, not real sure, but let's try. And we make improvements that I didn't think were possible. So it ended up being more postural. And that's really exciting when that happens. But so where I'm headed down this little rabbit hole is ultimately what matters when we're looking at horses is their function. Can they do the job we want them to do? Can they live their life comfortable, pain-free, or pain very managed? Can we do that? And conformation and posture inform us in what we can say is the prognosis, what we think is going to be possible for that animal. But ultimately what it comes down to is the individual and the program, and what matters is can they do it? And can they do it in a healthy way? And conformation and posture, it's a lot of, I'm not sure how I want to say this. It matters and it also doesn't matter, is the gist.
Some things that you can do and there's some things that you can't. And there's some horses that are going to be more predisposed to performing specific functions better than others. There's some horses that, I own some, that are extremely athletic, but not exactly what you would want to see as far as being more on the healthy side, as far as traveling and that type of thing. And then I've got some that have the best, super strong core, are very balanced horses, but they aren't as fast. So, it's like a give and take kind of thing. And that's where all this kind of gets really blurry in the performance horse world, because we have these super athletic animals, but they aren't always the best at self-preservation.
So then my other little note here that I caught while Casey was talking is what it comes down to in, maybe we'll take this somewhere in level 2, but there's no such thing necessarily as a bad posture. When we're teaching it, again, we put things in categories. There's good posture, there's bad posture, and the reality is blurrier than that. So when we showed all those photos and videos of this is a horse going better and this is a horse going poorly, we miss some nuance there because we're learning and we're putting things into categories to help you develop your eye. But there's not really such a thing as a bad posture, because the horse is going to truck driving by, the horse is going to automatically choose some bad postures because that's natural for them. The horses were not created with the idea of humans riding them, that's not how they were made. So when we start developing riding horses, we need to strengthen them and ask them to move in a way that is conducive to us sitting on their back and maintaining health of the spine. So that's why this becomes good posture, because it's good for what we want to do. It's not necessarily that it has to happen for the horse to just be a horse. So when we're talking about good and bad, really What's problematic is when a horse is stuck in any one posture and cannot move out of it. Fixity, stuckness, like this is the problem. We really want our horses to be able to move in all postures and be resilient and be able to handle anything that gets thrown at them, because if we just train our horse to go really nice, lifted back, nice long low headset on a straight line, and then you want to go turn a barrel at like Mach 10, your horse is not, that doesn't just translate over automatically. We have to take steps to build up the ability to now like turn and use all that stuff. So
they need to be able to do all things.
They have to be agile.
Yes, they need to be able to go with their heads up in a different position, down in a different position. You know, all these different ways. It's like more like a rubber band type of a situation, not a fixed position like what she's referring to. I talked about the last time. I'm gonna talk about it again though, because it's important. Because in barrel racing, we see a lot of horses, or we even own a lot of horses that are very, I know now that it's hollow. It's called a hollow position, where you have your back down, head raised, and the horse is kind of more in flight mode, right? Where we are actively like trying to hold back, and people refer to them as being dragons and like all these things. Your horse isn't really a dragon. Your horse is weak. So it's weak because it's going into a flight mode, right? It's trying to get away because the position that it's in doesn't really feel very good to them. They're not confident in the way that they're moving, and so it's more of like a scared reaction, not really like, oh, I feel so good and peppy. And now, don't get me wrong, that we do have that, and it's a far different type of feeling. What I'm talking about is the horse that you get on and just all of a sudden goes into like a panic state. You know, you hop on them and they're like ready to just explode or run, or you know, and that is common in barrel horses. I know a lot of people that don't even ride their horses during the week just because of this, and it's because it's not fun. And so we are trying to work away from that and build something that is more stable, and then the response you get should be different. I can say, like, I don't own a horse that is like that, but I've ridden plenty that are like that, and it's not exactly fun. So, that the mode that she's talking about is that, you know, or being stuck in a position is that just up and just goes directly to that one place and stays there. It doesn't ever offer to go down or mid, you know, just always.
And I think I'm trying to remember when we talked about this in the other one. I want to kind of keep it similar, but we talked a little bit too about when you were looking at Joe and you knew something was wrong because his back was frozen. It was stuck, and he could not move out of that stuckness. It was just frozen, and so that is problematic too. So we'll probably touch more on this as we go, but that's kind of what we're talking about here. Okay. Next question. Can a horse's neck dip be camouflaged by fat? I got this question twice, so this is a good question. So we're thinking about obese horses, or even horses that are bred to be fleshier. And I also, you know, want to tie in here, like, just different breeds of horses have naturally different body types. And so absolutely yes. We have to learn how to train our eye to a variety of different body types. It's the same with humans when we're going through this with humans, or when I was going through this with humans, but the same with horses. They're going to be naturally different based on breed. So if you only looked at quarter horses and you're really good at assessing a quarter horse, and then a Friesian pops up or a gaited horse pops up, like I threw at you guys in the Facebook group, and Casey was like thinking I was insane. But if we're only used to looking at one type of horse, and then someone has a different one, like, your eye may not be used to looking at that other breed, and it might throw you off. So when you're learning, the best thing I can recommend for you is to look at the widest variety of horses you have available to you and practice on different body types. And also be aware that a horse that is obese or underweight is going to throw that off too, because if your eye isn't used to accounting for those differences, it can get confusing. And obese horses especially can be a little more deceiving. Sometimes things become more obvious on underweight horses, but with obese horses, our bony landmarks become harder to see. Fat pockets start to fill in any atrophied areas, so that can be harder to recognize, and it does absolutely throw things off. So you have to know to take that into account if you're looking at an obese or underweight horse, and when you're looking at different breeds. And practice with a variety is my advice.
Yeah, and look at the horse as a whole too.
Yeah.
Assess the entire body.
Great point.
Because that, I feel like that's helpful. And I think we talked a little bit about like reiners, because sometimes they'll have these big, beautiful looking necks, and then you take the saddle off and you're like, what happened? So that's where, you want the nose to tail connection to work together.
Yeah.
You can have parts of the body that look like they are great, and then others that are really like lacking. So there's something that is missing in that picture if you have one that's like glaringly obvious, and others that look pretty good, and that also does kind of give you a good idea at the same time, like things that you might need to focus on a little bit more. But the overall picture is kind of more along the lines of what you are looking at.
Yeah, I like that. And I think we should beat this into everything that we do, is like it is a whole horse picture that we need to have. We cannot just look at the neck, cannot just look at the headset, we cannot just look at one part of the back. Like it has to be the whole picture to be accurate. So
yes, I'm gonna go on that a little bit more.
Do it.
Nose down, like we're starting at whatever we can get, right? Like that's a good place to start from, but it is really, like she said, looking at your back, your like how everything is moving together. It's not just one piece. So when you are riding around, like, so I know me, like to get the head down, they were like seesaw and add leg, seesaw, add leg. Well, I was seesawing and adding leg all the time, and I'm like, this isn't working because I keep having to do it. Something is not working if you're having to repetitively do it. Like they're not grabbing what it is that you're asking for if you keep having to repeat. So that's the one thing that I love about this so much, is that like once you start doing it, they pick it up and they stick with it, and you don't have to keep doing it over and over and over.
Yes.
So
and something you pointed out when we did this the first time is watching your horses out in the pasture. Casey brought this up, and I see it in my own horses as well, is we've taught them these concepts, and now you look at them out in the field moving around, and they are moving beautifully, and you're like, oh, they carried that over into the rest of their life. It wasn't only happening when I was on their back. And that is the key here, because what you do for an hour a day, maybe at best, right, for most of us, it matters. But what is the horse doing the other 23 hours a day? And if we can get them to change the way they're moving the other 23 hours of the day, we're going to have so much better results. Yeah,
and with the, like, my whole seesawing thing, I didn't know any other way. Like, I thought
that's what most people are taught.
That is what you learn that in dressage lessons. You learn that, you learn that. I learned that in hunters. I learned that in Western pleasure. I learned that in barrel racing. Like any discipline, that is what I've been taught. But if you're only affecting like the face and the nose, right? You're not getting the whole. Yeah, you can drive with your leg, but you need the whole body to be able to carry itself. And so if you're holding and supporting that, it's fake. It's not. You're not getting a real effort or whole body movement like you really need to be able to build those muscles properly.
And I want to reiterate too that we are asking the horse to lower their head and neck because it puts them at a biomechanical advantage to use the rest of their body the way that we're looking for. The horse can still go nose to the floor and hollow in their back. I see it all the time. So it doesn't automatically fix everything. The headset is not really the point here. And what Casey's saying, if you're only looking at the head and neck, you're going to be missing a lot. So we've got to look at the whole body. But the reason we start with head and neck lower is because that makes it easier for the horse to engage the right muscles and do this. And now we can shift it into other head and neck positions while maintaining the core engagement. Right. Okay.
I think a squirrel there. But
we did. It was great. It was great. Okay. We're on to question 3. We're doing good. I'm curious how other things such as dental, hoof care, body work, chiropractic, PEMF, all the other modalities that we've got can affect this process. Do they go hand in hand? Does one come before the other? So like if you have a horse trying to find balance but they can't because of hoof or dental issues, what do we do? And I love this question also. This is another like big soapbox topic for me, so I wrote notes, so I'll try to stay on task. Yes. So they absolutely go hand in hand. That is my short answer. One piece being off, one piece missing is going to impact the other piece's abilities to improve. And I think Casey and I touched on it earlier. I don't know, it might have been an hour ago when we were doing the other one. Yeah. We were talking about the feet and how, you know, the trimmer comes out and trims and 4 weeks later they're back and they're redoing the same exact thing. Like they're right back where they started and never able to get on top of it. And I talked to a lot of hoof care folks. I talked to a lot of dentists. I talked to a lot of body workers who they feel like they're spinning their wheels. They're working on the same thing every time because the movement aspect is not being addressed or another professional's piece is not being addressed. It all has to work together. So I think about it like the opposite of a vicious cycle. So when everything is getting worse, we're spiraling down, it's a vicious cycle in the bad sense. But when we're rehabbing, everything is building on each other and spiraling up. Better, better, better. So it all has to be getting better together. And if we're missing a piece, we're going to get stuck or we're going to slow way down. And that's kind of your key that maybe we're missing something somewhere and we need to kind of reevaluate and sort through that. But ideally, we're improving movement so that then the hoof balance can maintain better. And then we improve the movement and now the dental balance can maintain better. And we improve the movement and now the hoof balance is even better. And we're just working up together. So it has to be a team effort. If there's one thing I know to be true, like it has to be a team effort for especially rehabbing horses, but for performance horses too, because they have really hard jobs.
I mean, you can't really like build a puzzle if you're missing some of the pieces.
I love that.
So
that's a great analogy.
You have to have all things working together. Yeah. And I don't know if I'm jumping the gun going to this, but like part of this whole deal is that you need to be able to recognize if you got to be able to identify lameness. You've got to be able to tell like what a horse's foot looks like. You know, we're not hoof care providers. Mm-hmm. We hire people to do those jobs, but you have to be your own advocate. Yeah. That's the whole reason why
you're giving me a lot of ideas for level 2.
Yeah, I mean, this is why, like, we have all these people that we hire to help us with maintaining care of our horses, mm-hmm. right? But at the end of the day, it's the knowledge behind it. Like, we've got to be able to identify when we have something going wrong. Yeah. Like, you can identify if there's a huge hoof problem going on. Yeah. And you need to be able to identify if you mm-hmm. have, like, your horse is having a tooth issue beyond, like, maybe having them done once a year. Like, there's going to be other signs that those things are not in the normal mm-hmm. realm beyond.
And on the same vein, but maybe the inverse, is don't just attack your farrier if the hoof balance issue is not resolving, because it may not be their fault. They may be doing absolutely everything right, and the issue is somewhere else. So it goes both ways.
It does, absolutely.
Just to make it more complicated. Okay.
Moving on.
Okay. Question 4. Okay, this is great. This, I think, is a Casey question to start off. How do we go about working through this while still trying to exercise them and compete? Or is this something where we shouldn't be doing anything else until we've gotten all this stuff worked out correctly? Of course, assuming you are not rehabbing an injury. I'll turn that to you.
So, we're always going to have problems in our horses. You need to have the discretion. Like, is my horse lame? Mm-hmm. Is my horse, all these things that we just talked about, the feet, the teeth, like, have I done my best job doing this? If you have, and you've crossed all those bridges, and you've got all your ducks in a row, and you're competing on your horse now, and then continue on. We're not, like, don't quit doing what you're doing if you don't have any like visible issues. Add in some healthier habits to help your horse perform at a higher level. Take out the bad, add some good, you know. Now, do we have some people in this course who need to start from ground up? Absolutely. Yes, I'm sure we probably do. It's just always going to be a case-by-case thing. That is why, you know, that's the whole point of this, and that's why we're doing these live Q&As, is because every situation is going to be a little bit different. It depends on what that horse's particular needs are. If it is a train wreck that you're at when you're out there running barrels, then you might need to go back and figure out where you missed a step, because you're not going to fix it in the pattern. A lot of people think, oh, I'll just run barrels like 40,000 more times. I just need trips down the arena. I just need to get my timing right. None of that is going to matter if you missed step one, you know? So you're going to keep spinning your wheels in those cases. And that is why, like, the background, the evaluation piece, all these are so important and key into getting to that next level, getting all the things lined up. It's a team, you know? And so my answer to that is, like, there really isn't a solid answer. It's just going to be you. It's going to be dependent on you. And if you need to dive further, you know, we're going to, throughout the course, you're going to learn more and more and more about these different kinds of things and on what you should be looking for and all that. But I don't think that we can tell you exactly, you know, from a screen and not being able to,
and not looking at you.
Exactly. And we're not visiting your horse, you know, all these things, but we want you to be able to tell, you know, when things are going astray.
I mean, ultimately, that's the point. Like, so we're going to give you guys exercises, and we'll get there when we open module 2, we'll start it. We're going to give you examples of things that work well for us. These are suggestions and concepts. They are not like a recipe that automatically guarantees success. I wish it was that easy. We would be millionaires. But we're giving you the concepts, and we're going to teach you how to tell if the horse is doing it well or the horse is doing it in a way that's not benefiting them, because that's really how you know where to start. Can your horse do this? Great. Green light to continue. Is your horse doing this in a way that is not so healthy? Okay, pause, reassess. Can we take something away? Can we make it a little bit easier and keep going? Or if you're totally stuck, that's when you get that red light, stop, get professional help, kind of reevaluate where we're at. So, hang on, lost my train of thought. I was like totally rolling.
It's totally gonna be like, when she said that too, there's things like, there's parts of these exercises that I've been doing for years and my horse still isn't very good at. So they're not gonna be pros at every single thing, but like if you're having like super bad reactions, like I'm trying to back up and my horse rears up, or you know, I'm riding and my horse is bucking, that's one of those, like, we probably need to scale down, level down, reevaluate, see what's going on, and build back up. I will say though, with these exercises that we start from the ground and we kind of build up. If you follow the way that we have this module, like the module set, and you kind of go along on this, it should set you up in a really good, now considering we don't have any like huge issues or
rehab horses have different rules.
They do. Different rules, different everything. But it should set you up on a good path, and then you just keep those things in your program while you're going.
Yes. And that, okay, I've gained a new train of thought and remembered my old one. So this should not replace necessarily a solid program that you have in place. If you're having success with a program, I'm not saying erase that and start over. What we're hoping this will do is give you more ideas of other things that have worked well for us and inform your ability to do the stuff you're already doing better. So that's the goal. And my other train of thought was that the exercise is not as important as the way in which the exercise is done. So the example I gave before was if we're doing trot poles, say, we love trot poles. I love trot poles. The internet loves trot poles. If we have a trot pole grid set up and your horse is going through it totally inverted, upside down, neck is in the air, back is hollow, it's not a good exercise. It is not doing what you think it's doing. It is not helping your horse. So just because it was a great exercise for me, if your horse is doing it in a way that is not conducive to building the right muscles, then you've just reinforced the bad pattern and made it stronger. So how it's done matters more, and recognizing, oh, my horse can't do this in the posture that I want to reinforce. How can I make this exercise easier and allow them to find that posture that I wanted? So being able to scale things up and down is a skill that we really want you guys to take away from this course.
Yes, there are a million barrel racing drills out there, and there's a million trot pole patterns that you can do, and you can go out there and ride hours and hours and hours every day and get absolutely nowhere. I know this because I've done it. And people bang their heads against the wall because they cannot figure out, well, my horse still has weak stifles, or my horse is not, he's still weak in the core, and I've done all these things that people have told me to do or I've read to do. It's not that you're not doing the work, it's that you're doing the work wrong. So that makes a big difference. You can just do a little tiny bit of work in a positive direction, and it will give you 10 times the results that you have by riding hours and hours and literally just making yourself miserable and your horse miserable on doing these repetitive patterns that aren't getting you anywhere, basically. So
Totally. Okay, next question. It was a series of questions. 2 questions about rider balance. How does the rider impact the horse? Say examples where I broke my leg, or I just had a kid, and now I know I'm not as strong as I was, or I know I'm a little imbalanced. And how does that play a role? So we're not going to specifically talk about that in this level 1 course. But it's a great question. I'm glad you guys are thinking this way because it's absolutely relevant. So it could be a whole course on its own, so I'm not going to dive deep down this rabbit hole. But what I want to leave you guys with is this image of wearing a backpack on one shoulder or a heavy purse, and think about the ways in which that would change the way you stand, the way you walk. And it's kind of an extreme example. Most of us are not that heavy on one side of our horses, but even in more subtle ways, it's going to show up, especially when you're doing high level sports like barrel racing, which is extremely difficult. So that we're kind of leaned over this way, a little more weight on this leg, it's going to impact the way the rest of the body works. And so we just need to be aware of that. And again, add that to our list of things. If we're stuck and things are not getting better, there is a chance, unfortunately, that it could be you. So always don't beat yourselves up, but be aware of that as a thing. So, okay. Number 6. Does building strength and balance also affect other typical barrel maintenance like hock and stifle injections? And do you think correct form reduces the incidence of these types of things in the joints, or is it just a part of life with a ridden horse? Also a phenomenal question. I'm very happy with the kinds of questions we got. So yes, I do think that by teaching our horses to move in healthier ways, and my point here of teaching them to move healthy in a variety of ways, in a variety of circumstances, not just straight down the rail, but it has to incorporate all of the movements they could possibly do, will absolutely make them more resilient and reduce the risk of injury. Now, we cannot reduce the risk of all injuries. Horses do stuff, you guys know this, you own them. Horses do stupid stuff in the pasture all the time, with us nowhere near, and we can't prevent everything bad from happening. Or maybe you have a horse who already has something going on, and we're managing that. We're not necessarily going to eliminate the need for any kind of maintenance. But I do think that we can reduce the risk of needing new stuff, and we can, in a horse that starts this way from the beginning, I think we can reduce the need for it, period. But, there's always stuff out of our control as well.
I'm going to talk about injections.
Yeah, I love
because,
that. Yeah, you've got experience.
Got a lot of experience in injections. Okay, so a lot of that also is going to depend on your horse's previous life.
Yeah.
So if you, the horse that I run, I've been running since 2012. Not the whole time, Unfortunately.
Some breaks in there.
Had some breaks in between. But I mean, there's wear and tear. You know, they're horses, they're athletic animals. We're asking them to do things that are not natural to their bodies.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have levels of what maintenance might be for each horse. So depending on where you catch your horse in their life stage and what their past life experiences have been like, I think is going to be highly dependent upon what kind of maintenance that you're going to have to continue on with, and also, you know, what you might be able to maybe stay away from or no longer be dependent on.
Or need it less frequently would be another sign of success.
Yes, prolonging those. So
Yeah. Okay. And we did this question earlier originally. We're going to do it at the end today. So at what point do you involve your vet if you feel like your horse physically cannot do the basic biomechanics? So this person's example was that they had a horse who had some arthritis in her neck and like physically could not carry herself differently, especially not correctly, due to the inflammation and the pain. After steroid injections, this person found that their horse was much more comfortable, even just like moving around out in the field. And, you know, this seems like a problem that could be common for barrel horses, especially lumbar, SI, neck. So they just wanted to see if their thinking about this was correct. And my answer is yes. Thinking about this is absolutely correct. There are times when we need medical intervention to then be able to implement the exercise portion and improve the way the horse is moving, change the biomechanics. This is a very, very real thing. And so we explain this as we call this a pain, spasm, pain cycle. So when a horse, human, any kind of animal is in pain, our brain sends signals to that area to like lock it down. We want to reduce movement. We want to protect that area. We want to keep it from getting injured worse. So this is a natural response.
The frozen back that we were talking about.
That's where it came in.
So I think I kind of maybe talked about like horses are prey animals. They're going to try to hide wherever their weaknesses are. So that's where we start chasing our tails a lot of times, trying to figure out where our problems actually lie.
Totally.
So the pain, freezing, all this, like the spasm, like she said, like a lot of that, what we're seeing is this.
Yes, it's a protective mechanism. They're trying to keep themselves safe. And so the pain causes the spasm, and that makes it weaker because now it's not being used normally. And then that causes more pain and more spasm and more weakness, and it goes. This is a vicious cycle. This is a bad kind of cycle. I know we're getting music now. So when that happens, sometimes we need medical intervention or body work, modalities, laser, PEMF, whatever you have available to you and what works for your specific situation. But sometimes we need that intervention to break that pain spasm cycle, to allow the horse to move that area, to relax the tight muscles, to engage the stuff that has been weak. And if we don't try anything to break that pain cycle, we're gonna really struggle. And my other point, I'll let Casey talk a little more about, was like with her horse Joe. He had a meniscal tear, and like there was this piece of meniscus like flowing in the joint fluid, just like having a grand old time in there. And we can cross our fingers and hope that is going to scar down and stop bothering him, but that is really crossing our fingers and hoping. And if we didn't remove that, then he's going to keep having inflammation, keep having pain, keep having that catchy stickiness in that joint. And in that case, like, you need medical management. We needed surgery in that case to resolve that. And I just talked about that for you, but if there's anything you have to add.
I do. I can always have something to add. So a lot of times when I think about them and go back to injections and on this, there's a lot that we can't see, right? There's so much that like you can ultrasound and you can kind of see in there, but when I got to watch some of the pictures and videos of the scope that they did on my horse's stifle, Y'all, there is so much. So debris, you'll get debris. And what debris is just fraying of these ligaments and tissues that are inside the joint. And that is what causes your inflammation, need for injections a lot of times.
Yeah.
So when you go to your vet and you're like, why does my horse need injection? And they can't really ever give you a solid answer. A lot of times you do have something that is going on that's causing you a problem. Sometimes it is this very debris, which chronic micro tears in horses is pretty common. I didn't realize it was common, but you don't know until you totally tear a meniscus off, and then they go in there with a scope and show you. So that was an eye-opening experience for me. And without, like she said, like without calming some of these areas down, you're still gonna have that stiffness, you know. So we can't out-train pain, you know. Nothing that we can teach you is gonna outdo that. So if you suspect that there is some issues that are going on, there's lameness and there's weakness, you know, and sometimes there's both. A lot of times actually there's both, because the lameness causes the weakness. And so it is, again, developing your eye to see, you know, which one of those you might have going on with the intervention of your vet and your other practitioners.
Well, and that's where our team approach comes into play, because it's not always obvious what we're dealing with. And imaging, like, it circles us back to this conformation and posture. What can we change? What can we not change? And sometimes we don't know until we dive deeper down certain rabbit holes. Sometimes we never know. But that team approach is so important, and having the vet involved, especially if things are not getting better or you know there's something wrong, they need to be a part of the team. And my other point that I talked about before that I want to make sure I say here is that so the other thing I wanted to point out, I get a little distracted over here, is that veterinarians do not always have very solid training in biomechanics. Some do. There's some great performance vets out there that know a lot about this, but I think in their basic curriculum it is oftentimes not like super well covered. And it's the same in the human world. Like, medical doctors do not have the same training in biomechanics that physical therapists do. It's the whole reason my profession exists. It's the whole reason it exists. It's why it's its own doctorate program. There's so much to know about this. It would be absolutely insane to expect all of our vets to have all of this knowledge in addition to all of their vet knowledge that they need to have. So this team approach, being able to attack these issues from all the different angles, is so important. So important. I just want to reiterate that 100 times. So.
It's very important.
Yeah. So I think that was our last question, and I think we covered all my bullet points. So we did pretty good. We stayed on track. We stayed on time, and we actually recorded it this time.
We did.
So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you later.
Yes. If you have any questions, please reach us at nextlevelbarrelracing@gmail.com, and we would be glad to address those. And thank you for joining us today.
Yep, fabulous. Bye.
Bye.